The sword wasn't glowing when Sergeant Eli found it, though the way it whispered his name, like a drunk karaoke host who somehow knew all his secrets, was concerning. It had been a long morning of post-battle cleanup, which, in Eli's opinion, was the galaxy's most expensive form of garbage collection. The air above the outpost shimmered with the dying embers of plasma fire, and the ground smelled faintly of burned lubricant and scorched alien moss. His armor HUD blinked with a reminder, "You volunteered for this duty." Eli snorted. "Yeah, sure. Volunteered. Right after I replaced the commander's desk chair with one that squeaks every time he breathes." The rubble pile he was working on had once been a pirate landing craft. Now it was a heap of twisted alloys and melted plating, with just enough jagged edges to make lifting debris a blood donor's nightmare. He shifted a blackened girder and caught sight of something wedged deep in the wreckage, a long, narrow case. The thing was absurdly heavy for its size. He pried it loose, dusted it off, and noticed a faint seal along the edges. The surface shimmered, like old lacquer under candlelight, and in the center was a single line of text in perfect Terran English. "Property of none of your business." Eli grinned. Finally, an honest label. With a practiced flick of his multi-tool, the seal gave way. The case split open like it had been waiting for centuries just to show off. Inside was a sword, sleek, alien-forged, yet the metal seemed to drink in the light rather than reflect it. Along the blade's fuller, etched with impossible precision, were words in English. "Those who took my life will now fear yours." Eli tilted his head. "Okay, creepy." The sword didn't hum or flash, but it felt awake, like an animal keeping still only because it wanted to see what you'd do next. He reached for the hilt. The leather was cold, but it warmed instantly in his grip. A faint vibration pulsed once, like a heartbeat. Behind him, a voice rasped, "Human, step away from the artifact." Eli turned to see Zerkai, tall, reptilian, and perpetually wearing the expression of someone smelling spoiled milk. The alien captain was flanked by two of his soldiers, each holding rifles at the ready. "Artifact?" Eli asked, still holding the sword. "This? Pretty sure it's just a collector's item. Maybe a letter opener. 4 really big letters." Zerkai's nostrils flared. "Its energy signature predates your species' spaceflight. Relinquish it to my custody." Eli's tone stayed light, polite. "Captain, I'd be happy to loan it to you, right after it's been checked in with the Coalition records. You know, paperwork. My favorite thing." The captain's slit-pupil eyes narrowed. He wasn't used to humans smiling while refusing him. Before the tension could thicken, another figure stepped into view. Kelrin, the insectoid tactician. Taller than Zerkai but quieter. His 4 glossy eyes flicked from the blade to Eli, studying both with a patience that felt older than the war itself. Kelrin's voice clicked softly. "That script. I have seen it before. In ruins older than my people's written history." Rova, a young cadet with feathers instead of hair, hopped over the debris. "Why is it in human writing? Wasn't this made by—" She stopped as Zerkai shot her a look sharp enough to cut steel. Eli sheathed the sword into the case. "Sounds like it's got a story. I'll keep it safe until the Coalition decides who gets to brag about finding it." Zerkai's jaw muscles worked, but Kelrin gave a slight tilt of his head, a silent signal that pushed the captain into reluctant retreat. As the aliens left, Rova lingered. "Does it really talk?" she whispered. Eli smirked. "Not yet. But it does stare at me in a way that's probably illegal in 3 systems." By nightfall, word had spread through the outpost like bad cafeteria chili. The human sergeant had found a cursed sword. Depending on who you asked, it could slice through starship armor, summon ghosts, call every pirate in the sector straight to you. Eli ignored the chatter, nursing a cup of coffee in the mess hall when Kelrin joined him. "You are not concerned," Kelrin said. Eli shrugged. Should I be? Kelrin's mandibles clicked once. If the blade's origin is what I suspect, your species is not as young as the archives claim. And that would frighten many. Good, Eli said, sipping his coffee. Fear makes people polite. An hour later, alarms wailed. The comm system lit up with urgent chatter. Unknown energy surge detected. Source triangulated, Sector 4, near the excavation site. Eli jogged out, the sword case slung over his shoulder. The rubble pile where he'd found it was now lit by an eerie pulse from the blade inside. Slow, steady, like a beacon. Zerkai appeared, eyes wide. What did you do? Opened a box, Eli said. Didn't know it came with a galactic, find me, signal. Long-range scans confirmed it. Ships, unidentified, massive, and ancient in design, were converging from multiple jump points. No known faction used that configuration. Kelrin's voice was quiet but edged. They are responding to the sword. Zerkai rounded on Eli. Deactivate it. Eli smiled faintly. Captain, you think I read the manual? The blade pulsed again, brighter this time. Somewhere out there, in the dark between stars, something had heard the call. And it was coming. The war room of Outpost 6 looked less like a chamber of galactic diplomacy and more like someone had crammed too many egos into one airtight box. Around the central holotable, alien commanders argued in overlapping tones. Holographic projections of the approaching fleet shimmered above them. Massive, jagged silhouettes drifting through deep space like predators who didn't care if you saw them coming. Eli sat at the far end of the table, legs crossed, hands wrapped around a mug of coffee. He wasn't on the council roster. He was invited because he was the idiot who'd found the sword. He hadn't spoken yet, which was driving Zerkai crazy. This is a weapon of mass disruption, Zerkai snapped, tail lashing against the floor. It must be destroyed before that fleet arrives. That fleet might not be hostile, countered Admiral Corsoon, a cephalopod-like diplomat with a voice like wet gravel. Ancient doesn't mean aggressive. They're coming because of that, Zerkai said, jabbing a claw toward Eli. You humans think every shiny thing is a toy. Eli took a sip. I wouldn't call it a toy, Captain. More like a very sharp conversation starter. A ripple of annoyance passed around the table. Kelrin, leaning against the wall, clicked his mandibles softly. If the inscription is genuine, this is not an ordinary relic. Its origin implies a revision of history. Korsoon's eyes bulged. You suggest humans had interstellar reach before the records claim? Eli smiled faintly. Records have a way of being written by whoever's still standing after the shooting stops. Silence followed, thick, uneasy. Zerkai broke it with a hiss. You admit to deception? I'm admitting nothing, Captain, Eli said evenly. But I'm noticing you're very quick to assume the worst about humans. That's smart of you. Kelrin tilted his head, for eyes studying Eli. You speak as though your species has faced such fleets before. Eli didn't answer right away. He let the question hang, the hum of the holotable filling the gap. I'm saying we've learned how to make enemies think twice. The holoprojector shifted, showing the approaching fleet in greater detail. Their hulls were engraved with the same crest that marked the sword's guard, an angular emblem like a bird mid-dive, talons forward. Kelrin traced the symbol in the air. I have seen this in ruins on the Ventari moons. The same site where weapons older than the war itself were found, and removed from the archives. Zerkai's frill tightened. Conspiracy theories. Facts, Kelrin corrected. Facts someone tried to bury. The outpost's comm system chimed. Sector surveillance update. Fleet ETA, 18 hours. Formation unchanged. No response to hails. 18 hours, Zerkai growled. Plenty of time to remove the human from the equation. Eli's gaze didn't waver. Remove me, and you lose the only person the sword seems willing to follow home. I'm guessing you've noticed it doesn't like being handled by anyone else. Zerkai's glare deepened. We can force it. Eli set his mug down. His voice stayed calm, but each word carried weight. You could. But if I'm right, the fleet won't care about your chain of command. They'll care about the one holding this blade when they arrive. And if it's not me, well, I hope you have a better smile than mine. The reptilian captain's tail stilled. Even Korsoon shifted uncomfortably. Rover burst in without protocol. Feathers flared. You need to see this. She tapped the controls, and the holos shifted again, showing several smaller ships breaking away from the ancient fleet. They were scattering, targeting separate coordinates across coalition space. Kelrin's mandibles clicked. Scouting runs, or retrieval operations. Zerkai turned to Eli. What are they retrieving? Eli shrugged lightly. Friends. Supplies. Whatever's in the pantry after a few thousand years. Nobody laughed. The council fractured into competing strategies. Korsoon pushed for negotiation. Zerkai demanded preemptive strikes. Kelrin argued for observation and patience. Eli listened, silent, until Zerkai finally barked, Human, you brought this problem. Offer a solution. Eli leaned forward, elbows on the table. Simple. Don't attack. Don't run. When they arrive, I'll talk to them. Zerkai recoiled. You expect us to let a single soldier handle first contact with a war fleet? Not just a soldier, Eli said, tone almost friendly. The one carrying the only thing they've responded to in centuries. Korsoon's tentacles twitched. And if they're hostile? Then you'll be glad I'm between them and you. Kelrin broke the tension with a slow, deliberate click. Let him try. If they sought destruction, they would arrive at speed. They are coming at a pace meant to be noticed. Zerkai hissed but didn't push further. The vote was taken. Eli would handle initial contact, under surveillance, with half the outpost's guns trained on the newcomers. As the meeting broke, Kelrin intercepted Eli by the door. You are either supremely confident or hiding fear very well. Eli smiled without warmth. Both. Keeps people guessing. And the sword? Kelrin asked. Eli adjusted the strap on the case. Feels like it's waiting for something. Or someone. Kelrin's gaze lingered on him. Perhaps it has already found them. Later, in the quiet of the barracks, Eli set the case on his bunk and opened it. The blade lay still, yet its dark metal seemed deeper than shadow. He spoke to it in a low voice. Who's coming, and what do you want me to do about them? No answer, just the faintest pulse through the hilt, sinking for a moment with his heartbeat. Outside, the stars shifted as the outpost's long-range arrays tracked the fleet. 18 hours to arrival, and the galaxy felt smaller than it had that morning. Eli closed the case and locked it. All right, he murmured, let's make a good first impression. The sword didn't glow, but in the quiet, he could swear it was listening. The ancient fleet emerged from FTL like predators stepping out of a fog. No flash, no dramatic energy flare, just there, as if they'd always been waiting. From the outpost's observation deck, the ships filled the viewport in layered silhouettes. Black hulls cut with faint silver lines, sharp angles that caught no light, and that same bird-diving emblem etched into every prow. 37 confirmed vessels, the sensor officer reported. Largest one, God's. It's the size of a moon. They're not broadcasting, Zerkai said flatly. His tail twitched. the only sign he was unsettled. Eli stood at the glass, sword case over his shoulder. Maybe they're shy. Kelrin's mandibles clicked once. Or they have nothing to say to anyone but you. The comm officer's console lit up without warning. An open-channel transmission played. No translation required. The voice was human. Deep, resonant, and far too clear to be coming from a ship thousands of kilometers away. The heir of our commander has been found. Who dares threaten him? The observation deck went still. Even the consoles seemed quieter. Zerkai stepped forward. This is a coalition world. State your... The voice cut in, sharper. We were not speaking to you. Every alien in the room turned to look at Eli. He sighed. Guess I'm up. The docking process was like being swallowed. A shimmer of light enveloped him, and suddenly the outpost was gone, replaced by a vast, dark hangar. No crew in sight. The air felt heavy, dense with age and memory. A corridor of black metal opened ahead. Eli walked, boots echoing against a floor that seemed to hum faintly under each step. The chamber at the end was circular, walls lined with tall banners bearing the sword's crest. In the center stood a figure. Not flesh, not entirely machine, but something in between. Its form shifted subtly, as though the eye couldn't decide which version of it was real. You carry his blade, the figure said. Eli set the case down, opened it, and held the sword in one hand. Found it in a pile of scrap. Didn't come with an instruction manual. The figure moved closer. Its eyes were pools of shifting silver. You found it because it called you. Only his bloodline could open its seal. Neat trick, Eli said. But the bloodline thing? You might be assuming a lot. You are Terran, the figure replied. That is enough. The AI, or whatever it was, gestured, and the floor lit with projections. Battles unfolded in miniature. Fleets burning, alien capitals falling, a Terran warlord standing at the heart of it all with the sword in hand. This was the first war, the figure said. The coalition you know was forged in fear of him. They united not for peace, but to kill him. They did. We remained, waiting for his return. We did not know it would be you. Eli watched the holograms without flinching. If you're looking for revenge, you might have noticed I don't have a war fleet in my back pocket. The figure's voice deepened. You do now. Back at the outpost, Kelrin tracked Eli's signal. His vitals are steady. Good, Zerkai muttered. Means we still have a chance to stop this. Rova, watching the fleet through the viewport, shook her head. Stop what? They haven't fired a single shot. They're waiting for orders. Zerkai hissed softly. Exactly. On the flagship, the figure spoke again. Our ships are armed, fueled, and loyal. We can strike at the coalition before they can rally. End them as they ended him. Eli rested the sword across his shoulder. That's a tempting offer. But starting a galaxy-wide war on my lunch break seems impulsive. You hesitate? I think, Eli said, that real power isn't about hitting first. It's about making sure no one wants to be in your way at all. The silver eyes regarded him with something like approval. You speak as he did. The projection shifted to a star map. Key worlds lit up, coalition homeworlds, strategic choke points, and a dozen locations Eli didn't recognize. These, the figure said, are the places they cannot afford to lose. We can hold them without firing a shot. A blockade until they kneel. Eli studied the map. It wasn't just war, it was control. Total, patient, inescapable control. You're not ghosts, he said. You're a loaded weapon someone buried because they were scared to pull the trigger. We are yours to wield. Eli thought about the council back at the outpost, about Zerkai's constant suspicion and Kelrin's quiet calculations. He thought about every time humans had been underestimated out here. All right, he said at last. "We'll start with a message. Something polite. The kind they'll smile at while their stomachs drop." The figure inclined its head. "As you command." The return to the outpost was instant. One step through light, and he was back in the observation deck. Zerkai was mid-sentence and froze when he saw Eli. "Well?" the captain demanded. "They're not here to destroy anyone," Eli said. "Unless I ask them to." "That is not reassuring," Korsoon said carefully. Eli glanced at the viewport. The fleet had shifted position, no longer idle, but fanning out in deliberate arcs that cut off every possible approach. "This," Eli said, "is what you might call a friendly demonstration." Kelrin's eyes narrowed. "And their terms?" Eli smiled. "They don't have terms." "I do." No one spoke. Outside, the black silhouettes of the fleet hung against the stars, unmoving. Watching. Somewhere deep in the outpost, the sword pulsed once, faint and steady, like a heartbeat waiting for the next move. The bridge was silent except for the low hum of the station's deep-core reactors. Outside, the alien fleet floated like a dark metal reef, surrounding the Terran station in a perfect kill net. Their hulls gleamed with reflected starlight, weapon ports open, targeting arrays fixed on her command chair. Ava leaned forward, elbows on the console, eyes scanning the tactical overlay. The alien formation was textbook. Tight, confident, and lethally precise. They thought they had her cornered. They weren't wrong. They just didn't realize whose corner they'd stepped into. "Transmit one last signal," she said, voice calm enough to unsettle the younger officers. "Standard surrender protocol. Add the pause after the fifth syllable. Exactly 2.2 seconds. Lieutenant Garvey hesitated. "That's a coded message, isn't it?" Ava didn't answer. The pause would ripple through encrypted Terran relays hidden across the system, triggering a chain reaction of dormant defenses. She had written the protocol herself, back when the Defense Council still thought she was just an engineer with an unhealthy fascination for obsolete weapons. "They'll think it's a nervous breath," she added. Garvey transmitted. On the alien flagship, Admiral Vorex, a broad-shouldered predator with skin like wet obsidian, leaned back in his gravity throne. "They finally beg for life," he growled in his native tongue. "Prepare to accept their surrender. And then take the human alive." His second-in-command clicked in agreement. "The superweapon will be ours by the next cycle." Back on the Terran station, Ava's sensors lit up in layers. First came the deep ping of hidden drones waking from cryo-storage in asteroid shadows. Then, the faint resonance of old planetary defense satellites, officially decommissioned decades ago, rotating toward pre-calculated firing angles. The aliens were too focused on her station to notice the subtle adjustments. She leaned back. "Garvey, close all internal blast doors. Isolate engineering, weapons, and life support." "You expecting boarders?" "I'm expecting corpses," she said. The first pulse came from a point well beyond the alien formation, a single ion lance, narrow and blinding, slicing through the void like a thrown blade. It punched clean through one of the enemy cruisers, venting plasma and crew into cold vacuum. The rest of the alien fleet snapped into combat mode, their formation rippling as they adjusted for incoming threats. Ava watched the chaos bloom. The second wave was less elegant. 12 kinetic rods, each the size of a city bus, dropping from hidden orbital stacks. They hit with brutal precision, cracking hulls, splintering armor, and sending ships spinning out of control. "They'll trace the launches soon," Garvey murmured. "They'll try," Ava corrected. "But they're looking for ships. They won't think to scan abandoned mining rigs from the first wave of human colonization. Those rigs have been here longer than their empire." Vorex's flagship shuddered under a near miss. He slammed his clawed hands onto the console. "Find the source. Now." One of his lieutenants hissed in frustration. "It's everywhere. The humans have dispersed their weapons across." The deck shook violently, cutting him off. Because that's when the third layer triggered. Beneath the alien fleet, silent platforms buried under a century's worth of space debris came online. Magnetic rails the length of football fields charged to lethal capacity. The salvo that followed wasn't beautiful. It was surgical. Rail slugs punched through reactor cores, fuel storage bays, and command decks with mechanical indifference. By the time the aliens realized they were inside a pre-constructed kill zone, a quarter of their ships were drifting wrecks. Garvey's knuckles were white on the console. "Commander, they're breaking formation. Some are fleeing." Ava nodded, her eyes never leaving the tactical map. "Let them run. The survivors will spread the story." She allowed herself a thin smile. "And the story will be worse than the truth." On the alien flagship, Vorex's breathing grew ragged. He stared at the expanding ring of destruction. They couldn't have built this. They shouldn't have had the time. A comms officer spoke in a trembling voice. "Admiral, the human signal. It was intentional. They wanted us here." The realization hit Vorex harder than any rail slug. This wasn't a desperate defense. This was a trap. Every move he had made, every tactical adjustment, had been predicted and accounted for before his fleet even entered the system. Ava stood, straightening her uniform. "Send them one last transmission," she told Garvey. "What do you want it to say?" She thought for a moment. "Nothing threatening. Just this: you stepped into my workshop." When Vorex heard it, he froze. It wasn't the words, it was the certainty in her voice. The tone of someone who had already counted the bodies. He slammed a hand down. "Retreat. All remaining ships, retreat." But retreat wasn't salvation. The debris field they had ignored on entry now shifted, revealing itself as a dense web of drone mines. The first retreating destroyer triggered one. The resulting chain reaction rolled through the rest like a string of fireworks in a vacuum. The battle ended in under 9 minutes. Inside the Terran station, Ava turned away from the displays. "Garvey, begin salvage operations. Prioritize anything with intact data cores." He stared at her, still processing the scale of what had just happened. Was this all planned from the beginning? Planned. Ava smirked. "No. Built? Yes. You don't plan for a day like this. You just prepare, and wait for someone arrogant enough to give you the opportunity." Garvey exhaled slowly. "The Council is going to make you a hero." She gave a small, almost dismissive shrug. "They'll make up whatever story they need. I don't care. Just make sure the wreckage drifts far enough that the next fleet thinks twice." Outside, the last flickers of battle debris spun against the backdrop of cold stars. Somewhere in the distance, an alien distress signal repeated into the void, a warning to all who heard it. Humans were not to be underestimated. And Ava, the quiet engineer turned tactician, had just written that warning in blood and wreckage.